Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall, for the old fan, the new fan, and the UK fan. We welcome back Adam Martin once again to come help me chat to Jacob, who is going to be talking to us all about his team, the San Francisco 49ers, and their draft pick at number 3, Trey Lance. Going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Thank you for all the support you've had with our new YouTube channel over the past few days. We've had over 150 plus views on all our videos that we have on there so far, and this will be on there as well. Make sure you get your fellow fans subscribing to the YouTube channel. We have a competition at the minute for the Steve Rains Bowl, which is a fantastic fantasy football competition in memory of Steve Rains, who's a beloved member of the NFL UK community. It's sponsored by the Kings Fantasy Sports. So if you go onto our Twitter, you subscribe to our YouTube, just comment below, you'll go into into the pot and we'll pick a winner out of that, and you'll get your place in the Steve Rains Bowl, which should be a lot of fun this year. Jacob, thank you for joining us. In a day that has seen us re-enter pubs, we're now getting back to a little bit of normality. How are you feeling and how have you been, my man?
Yeah, really good, really good. Thank you. Like you said, it's nice to feel slowly like we're heading in the right direction. Given that I think it's rained for about 10 days straight, and the forecast looks like it's going to do the same for the next 10 days. I'm very happy that indoor is allowed again.
It's so nice today. It's been horrible everywhere.
Not
in Birmingham. It's been lovely in central London today. It's been really nice. It's been a shame not to be able to I haven't really done much really. I've not really utilised my day but wrongly. So obviously, Jacob, world record holder of visiting all the NFL stadiums in the shortest amount of time. Does it ever get old? World record holder?
No, not yet. We'll see how many years until someone nicks the title, though.
What was it that made you do it? I mean, was there problems in your home life? I mean, what was going on? I mean, to spend all this
wanted to get away for 3 months. Yeah.
It's knowing the state of the UK government and everything like that in the UK. I don't blame you for trying to get it. If anything, you should have done it in the longest period you could have done it.
Yeah, no, it was a great time, and I just went over a couple of times to watch games, and I don't know, I can't remember where I just got the idea of wanting to go to all of them, potentially like over my lifetime, as opposed to, in one season. And I was looking it up to see someone else must have done it before, I figured. And when I looked it up, someone had done it and they did it in a world record time. And I just, I looked at it and I was like, right, that's what I'm going to do. And it fit nicely because I think you're allowed a 90-day holiday visa. And I think because I did it in 84 days, I came back on the 90th day. So doing it as quickly as possible works very well for me.
It must have cost you a fortune, man.
Yeah, a fair bit, yeah. Money that was supposed to go on a house.
Right.
And now I'm renting.
Well, what's lifetime memories?
Exactly.
Memories that you'll hold forever.
No
you can't put a price on that, can you?
At all. Yeah.
Well, speaking of regrets, hopefully the San Francisco 49ers do not regret not taking Justin Fields, not taking Mac Jones. A lot of suspicion that they were the players going to go, but no, it was Trey Lance that got picked at number 3 by the 49ers. Obviously traded up with the Miami Dolphins to go there. They were always going to go over quarterback. It was a question of which one. What was your reaction as soon as Trey Lance's name is called for the San Francisco 49ers?
Relief initially. I think my exact words was, I'll take it. Going into that day, it truly felt like no one had a clue what was going to happen. And, the Niners did a great job of not leaking anything. And I think, even Trey Lance on the call you hear of Lynch and Shanahan talking to him, he had no idea. And it was one of those things. When we were at 12, I really, really wanted Mac Jones, funnily enough. That was something I was hoping the Niners would go in that direction, but I wasn't necessarily sure they'd go for a quarterback. And then the trade happened, and suddenly there was a chance at Justin Fields, at Trey Lance, and I really wanted Justin Fields. He was kind of my favorite guy, but he was the guy I'd watched kind of the most tape on. At the time, I hadn't watched loads of Trey Lance film. I was really a big fan of Justin Fields. The more and more film I watched of Trey Lance, the more excited I was by him as a prospect, especially, with someone like Kyle Shanahan to be, his coach. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really pumped up to see what he can do, whether that's this year, whether that's the year after, who knows, but I'm excited.
Do you have any doubts about him? Obviously, it's, there are certain things that you kind of feel like there are reasons why he wasn't necessarily the number 3 pick at the beginning of all this. But I mean, was there any doubts about the pick and then bringing him in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that stood out to me when I was watching film initially was probably some kind of poor mechanical things. You know, there was some footwork that really scared me at times. There were some throwing motions that weren't the greatest. And I think a couple of things happened. You know, we can say what we like about him being in the FCS and the level of competition he was going up against, but another thing that probably does to good players is give you bad habits. You know, by being a better player than everybody else, you can get away with not being perfect. I mean, he didn't throw a pick, right? He didn't throw a pick that entire season. Did he throw pick-worthy throws? Absolutely. And there were throws that 100% would have been picks in Div 1 in the NFL, but he got away with it. And I think some of those things, need fixing. But I heard not long after the draft that he worked with Niners coaches for about 2 weeks in the lead up to the draft, and that they were working on fixing his throw motion, fixing his footwork. And they were really, really impressed with kind of the leaps and bounds he came in just that short amount of time, that I think if they are content that he can have those things fixed by the time it comes to him playing, then realistically, I'm content.
He's also 21 years old. Like, he's got
young.
so much time to be able to learn these things. Like I said, if he's picking up things with just 2 weeks worth of the 49ers coaches being there, as well as other coaches being around like they were at the pro days, if he's doing well in them 2 weeks, he's going to pick up any offense and any style very quickly and get rid of them bad habits, like you said, that you saw in the tape. When in regards to the tape, where you've been watching, obviously, since drafting, I can imagine you've watched all the games that he's been in, because there wasn't that many. So it was quite an easy afternoon, I think. But what was the thing that most excited you when you were watching? I was watching stuff earlier, more in-depth stuff than I have done on him so far. But I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on what impresses you most.
The number one thing was the physicality. And that's something that when you watch the 49ers offense in general, it's something that's brought on every play. You look at any time Kittle has the ball in his hands. You look at any time Mostert has the ball in his hands. Debo and Ayuk this season, they're looking to finish plays. They're looking to run people over. And to be able to add that at the quarterback position just adds a whole nother level to that offense. It opens things up in the run game if suddenly you're having to account for him. And so, when he was able to take off, he's not a Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray type when he takes off, that kind of smaller, twitchy, change direction and make you miss completely. He's more of a Josh Allen, Cam Newton type, long strider, head down when he gets into contact and go through you. And that is, that in itself is something exciting to watch. But there was also some great things to see with his arm strength. And he doesn't force the ball down the field all that often. And I think that is one of the things that Kyle Shanahan probably does like. You watch the Niners offense and, a lot of the times it's underneath stuff until there is something wide open downfield. And, far too many times I've watched Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard miss completely wide open guys down the field. But some of the throws he was able to make down the field, even against, FCS defenders, they were the types of throws that you look at and go, it wouldn't have mattered what defender was on that. It was just a money throw. So, those are the things that I think, those are the high ceiling things, right? Those are the things you see out of your top prospects. It's, can he do it every play and can he do it in the NFL?
That's exactly the comparisons that you said there about Josh Allen, Cam Newton. When I watched it earlier, I was like, he throws like Josh Allen. He runs like Josh Allen, but has that aggressiveness of Cam Newton. But with the Lamar Jackson north to south running, he doesn't do what Josh Allen does, where he sort of maybe comes out the pocket and round. He runs with intent, and he runs for collision as well. He ain't afraid to get hurt and get his shoulder in the game. And it's nice. It must be nice having a quarterback that is going to take the team on his shoulders and run and smash into people if he has to.
Yeah. Definitely. And look at Josh Allen. I mean, the first 2 seasons, his throw motion wasn't perfect.
No,
he had, one of the biggest quarterback glow ups I've ever seen in the NFL. He went from, I think he added 100 yards a game to his passing total each game, and his accuracy jumped up like 15-20%. So, it might take time. He might have a couple of years like Josh Allen did at the start. Who knows? But if he can fix those things, and, you know, you end up with somebody like Josh Allen in 3 years' time, you've done pretty well.
How well do you think he's going to integrate into the NFL? And also, like, you know, one of the greatest coaches around at the moment in Kyle Shanahan, do you think that he is the guy who can really develop his game and turn him into, you know, a real special quarterback?
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, the main thing you heard out of the Niners camp after the draft was how impressed they were with how smart he was. And, you know, there was a lot of things around how smart Justin Fields was as well, but all the things they got from not only their meetings, but also the 2 weeks they spent with him leading up to the draft was they were blown away by how smart he is. And we all know that that Shanahan system can be complex at times. And so I think having somebody that they're really confident can process that and has good decision making is something else they were really impressed with. If you can get those two things, then I think, you know, you're onto a winner realistically, because you're going to make, if you make the right throw, then it becomes 10 times easier than trying to complete a particularly hard throw. So I think he definitely has the opportunity to do that. And, you know, as we said, I think the Niners system's going to change, though. I do think the Niners system, it's not going to be the system that they've run for the past 2-3 years with Jimmy G or Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard. I mean, you look at them drafting Trey Sermon as well out of Ohio State, trading up for a running back, something you'd never normally see Kyle Shanahan do. He loves his undrafted running backs, and he's made them work. But suddenly now he's trading up for a guy. He's taking, you know, a big guy and a guard out of Notre Dame. You know, they're taking a power guy. You know, historically, Kyle Shanahan likes smaller guards, you know, lateral movers, that zone scheme. And I think those two picks were basically indicating that, look, when we get down to the goal line or whatever, we might run QB power because we've now got a guard that can run QB power. We've now got QB power, but we can also run stuff where we've got like a read option power, because Trey Sermon's going to run downhill and give you that power option, but then you've also potentially got Trey Lance running off the outside. So I think the system will change, and that's what really intrigues me as to about when he comes in, because it's not just when he's ready, it's when is the rest of the team ready to now know essentially two systems.
So given that you feel that the system's going to change by bringing Lance in, do you feel that he was very much a Shanahan pick, or do you feel it might be more of like the general manager's side that decided to bring him in? Because Shanahan has, you know, historically kind of played relatively similar ways in other teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair observation. And, you know, some of the reports out there now, again, who knows what was true and what wasn't, but a lot of the reports out there was that the front office liked Lance and Shanahan liked Jones and all that kind of stuff. It is potentially an indication that Shanahan is it's either an indication that it wasn't his first choice, or that he's just willing to try something different, right? You know, we said he's played the same way this entire time, but it's not necessarily got him exactly where he needed to be with a Super Bowl win. And what you know, something else that people have pointed to is the fact that, you know, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, they were all that similar crop of coaches, and you've seen the Rams get rid of Jared Goff, who was a guy that was probably, you know, not necessarily similar to Jimmy G as a quarterback, but again, it was the type of guy that you could win with, right? You could win with in the right situation.
Super Bowl finalist 2 years ago.
Exactly. It's a very similar situation in that sense. He can win in the right situation, but are they necessarily the guys that when the game is on the line and you're down 10 points, you need to put the ball in their hands? Maybe not. And potentially, you know, Matt Stafford is instead that guy. So I think you're seeing a couple of changes from those types of coaches that really relied so heavily on their system and their playbook to say, look, no matter what happens, you know, we just need the right mold of player. And potentially they've looked at Matt LaFleur with somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who is that guy that can make, you know, lift the team and be that guy when they need to be. And that's where they're going.
Aaron Rodgers lifts the team. Is that right, Adam? Because last I heard, he didn't want nothing to do with Green Bay. I heard,
when he wants to, yeah.
I heard he was
lift him to a point, then he gives up.
I thought he was, looking like getting a bit attracted to Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton and those down in Colorado. Am I reading wrong? Is that right?
No.
sorry, Jacob. It's a very sour point for Adam. It's very upset and down meeting.
Yeah,
but you're right about saying that they're trying something different, because you look at the Shanahan's quarterbacks. Yeah, Robert Griffin III at Washington. Admittedly, Robert Griffin III is probably the most similar out of all these quarterbacks to Trey Lance, though there is differences there. He won an offensive rookie of the year that year. Yeah, Kirk Cousins, but wasn't his first choice, but he went with him. Johnny Manziel, obviously that was an awful decision in the end, but whether that was the Browns organization or Kyle. Yeah. And then Matt Ryan, who took to a Super Bowl, and Jimmy G, who took to a Super Bowl. So it is trying something new, but is it a bit scary for you that you're saying we're going to try a new system, even though the system in recent years, admittedly, has worked clearly, because it's taken Atlanta to a Super Bowl. It's taken you guys to a Super Bowl only last year. And let's be honest, you would have been in the Super Bowl running in the 2020 season if it wasn't that your key players were just ruined with injury. It was really unfortunate. And not just as a 49ers fan, for NFL fans, it was really unfortunate with the 49ers and the whole team. Does it worry you that changing the system might not actually be a positive thing?
Potentially, you just don't know. And I mean, even when you mentioned the Browns that year, when he had Brian Hoyer playing quarterback, the Browns did pretty well. And, the move to Johnny Manziel wasn't necessarily that they weren't doing that well. It was, pressure because he was the high pick. And I think it can be a little bit scary, because you don't know, we've had, this zone heavy system, and it's worked so well for players like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and all of these running backs and all this kind of stuff. And you do wonder, like, if you change to a power system, is now Trey Sermon the only guy that can run that system? Does it ruin it for everybody else? But also, kind of like I mentioned before, if you want to, at some point this season, start Trey Lance, now is everybody having to learn two systems? Is the playbook twice as big? Obviously, there'll be certain things they can keep in there, and there'll be smaller changes, but it becomes not a case of, is he just ready? Does that mean they wait a whole year? But then what happens if he gets injured? It does throw up a whole lot of questions, because, when Jimmy's in there, he's not running QB power. At least I hope he's not, after the amount I've seen him on the sideline in the past few years.
He wouldn't keep that face as good looking as it is if he was running power runs up D tackles' faces.
Not against the Rams.
I think Aaron Donald would have a lot to say to Jimmy G if he was getting in his face.
Coming back to Lance, and obviously the tape that you've seen now, I mean, what do you actually feel like his weaknesses are and coming into the NFL?
I think it's the main ones are the ones we touched on earlier, the mechanics and the footwork is something that he would definitely get away with. There's certain times he's taking the snap and dropping back, and he stood straight up, feet really close together. And you see it sometimes, with players that have got huge arms, where they don't necessarily need to rely on their footwork as much as they probably should. And that is something I think they'll fix. There was also some accuracy issues. Like I said, he didn't throw a pick, but he, more than a few times threw interception-worthy throws, right? They just weren't picked off, whether that's because the defenders weren't good enough or he just got lucky. As we said, it's a small sample, so luck does come into it. I think those are the things that not necessarily you need to be worried about, but that need addressing and need fixing, because one of the biggest kind of gripes at times with Jimmy G has been sometimes inaccuracy. It was as early as week 1 last season, and, a couple of throws behind receivers with a minute to go, and the Niners would have won that game. And instead they start off the season 0-1, and they never really truly recovered from then on. So I think if they can fix the accuracy, and like we mentioned with Josh Allen, he had accuracy issues and they fixed the throwing motion. So the first thing I'd be doing is finding out what they did there and doing the exact same thing.
You just touching on what you just said about Jimmy G there. You're right. He throws a few interceptions in the first game. He has a hard off season. There's no camp. It's a weird season for everyone. It was always going to take a while for people to get going in the NFL in the 2020 season. I'm not just talking about 2020 season. I'm talking about really Jimmy G's career in San Francisco. Has he really had a fair shake of it, do you think? Like, just in your opinion? Because it feels like as soon as he's turned up, he's sort of out the door pretty quickly again. It feels like there's been a very, very quick turnaround of Jimmy G getting San Francisco and now not going. I know not going, but definitely being replaced very quickly.
He's never on the field.
It is a tough one. I mean,
when he is on the field, he wins. That's all I know.
That was the main thing that Kyle Shanahan said, really, was that the reason they looked at this move was because I think, obviously, two of the three full seasons we've had of Jimmy G, he's not finished the season. And so that becomes a huge thing. You can be as good as you like when you're on the field, but if you're not on the field, you're of no use to the team, unfortunately. And on the field, I do think, from time to time, he's got a bad rap. I mean, you look at that playoff run and people were saying that Kyle Shanahan didn't trust him because he only threw the ball 8 times in the NFC Championship. But I mean, when if you can score...
Adam, you remember that, don't you? Yeah, I thought you'd remember that, yeah.
There we go.
I mean, if you could score, Raheem Mostert could score 4 rushing touchdowns and you can run the ball for 6-7 yards of carry, why throw the ball? I would say probably most football coaches would love to be in that situation where they don't have to throw the ball in any situation. So I definitely think he got, somewhat of a bad rap, but there was some times, last year where it was just down to him that we didn't win. And there's so much you can take of that. And I definitely think he can still win. You look at the year where the Niners were in the Super Bowl, in the right situation, absolutely he can win. And even in that season, you look at the Cardinals game, you look at the Saints game, you look at the Rams game, there was times where the ball did need to be put in his hands and he needed to be perfect for them to win that game. And he did do it. So it's not that he can't do it. All of these quarterbacks realistically in the NFL can do it. It's whether you can do it every game.
How much longer do you think he's going to be with the 49ers now that Lance has come in?
It's a really tough one.
Or even starting. Or I'll add on top of that. Or even starting.
I think he starts the season. And, when the pick was first made, I thought maybe we don't even see Lance this year. But the more and more I watch the film, the more I get the feel that Shanahan just won't be able to resist because there's so much stuff that he can't do with Jimmy that he'll be able to do with Lance. And knowing what Shanahan's like, I can imagine him, there's going to get to a point where he just wants to be able to run that stuff. And I wouldn't really be surprised if we see a Miami last year-like situation where rather than wait for it all to go, blow up and you're putting somebody in a terrible situation, let's say, I don't know, Jimmy is 4-2 after 6 weeks, but they feel like Trey Lance is ready. Don't be surprised if they do make somewhat of a switch. I think the bye week is really early this year for the Niners. They're in week 6. Potentially they feel if they feel he's ready, they make the change when he's ready to take over the team, not necessarily because Jimmy needs to give it up, but who knows?
It is a really difficult one, though, because obviously the difference between the 49ers and where Miami were last year is that the 49ers, with a fully fit team, are Super Bowl contenders. Whereas and are contenders with Jimmy G as well. But because he's been taken as high as he has been taken, that the press and the media are just going to be putting so much pressure on them to start him. It is a weird situation.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing as well, at least, is that what came from Jed York was they're more than happy if Trey Lance doesn't play for 2 years. And realistically, if he doesn't play for 2 years, things have gone very, very right. So I would be happy if that did happen in a sense. But yeah, it really is tough to know. And it's interesting because the team has, for as long as Jimmy's been getting this kind of bad rap from media or fans or whatever, the team seems to have really had Jimmy's back. You only have to, look at any interview with George Kittle, and he's talking about how he's, still on board with Jimmy G the whole time and defending him and all that. So it's going to be interesting because then come draft night, everyone was hyped for Trey Lance. But one of the nice things that I read was that the first person from the organization to text Trey Lance was Jimmy G. And I think, regardless of what happens, I think it's tough to see there being kind of like bridges burnt or, an Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love or Big Ben with Mason Rudolph type situation where they're like, no, I'm not going to help them. They can try and beat me.
You just had to bring it up, didn't you?
Damn Mason Rudolph. Oh, now Dwayne Haskins as well. Even worse. The Big Bench don't like anyone, apparently. Yeah, I'll come back to a point you said earlier. Like, he's only played 30 games, Jimmy Garoppolo, out of possible 64. But obviously took you to a Super Bowl, I suppose. And I completely agree with what you said. I really pounded the table for that within that whole playoff run and Super Bowl weeks. Obviously, you go on lots of podcasts, you talk to a lot of people, talk to a lot of fans and stuff. And everyone's like, yeah, but Jimmy G only threw the ball 8 times. Like, yeah, but they won the game. It don't matter that if that's how they win the game and that's the winning mentality and that's the system that wins, don't need to throw. It's when you're losing, but you need to change up your dynamic. When you're winning a game, it doesn't matter about how many times someone rushes or throws or anything like that. All it matters is that you won the game and you won it. And they won every playoff game convincingly as well, obviously, and nearly won the Super Bowl convincingly as well up until the fourth quarter. So clearly it was working. And it would be really fun to see Trey Lance in that system as well, but not rather than the running ball being the running back all the time. It works like the Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram dynamic that was happening in Baltimore only a couple of years ago. It would be a really cool venture to see that. Do you think if Trey Lance, say Jimmy G does, but let's just say, doesn't matter what record he's got, but Trey Lance jumps in, do you think you still are, as a team, Super Bowl contenders?
I think we could be right there. I mean, you look at the rest of the team and there's a lot of talent, and especially on the offense. I think the offensive line has been looks like it should be a big improvement, and that is a key. But I think you look at the receivers and they're potentially missing that third receiver. No one quite knows who that's going to be. They signed Marquise Lee recently. Jalen Hurd is somebody that fans have been excited for since the day they drafted him, and he's been injured for 2 years. So it's not somebody you can necessarily rely on. But you look at Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and they're two players that I think the team are really excited about. Obviously, you've got George Kittle, and the running back room now is bursting at the seams, really, with talent. I think they have definitely got the opportunity to be right there, and things would probably have to go right for them, but their schedule isn't too bad this year as well. I think they've got a fairly favorable a runner you can have in the NFC West anyway. But I think they can definitely be right there, and I think, they can be there with Jimmy, so it'll be interesting to see. Let's say this team starts off 7-1 or 6-2, let's see what happens. And I definitely don't think that Trey Lance starting will be the first time you see him. I think they're going to have some sub packages, potentially some goal line stuff where he is on the field, where he doesn't need to know the full playbook, but you're down at the 1 yard line and suddenly you've got Trey Sermon and Trey Lance down there, ready to take the snap. And as a defense, that sounds like a terrifying prospect.
Bit like a Jacoby Brissett, the Colts thing that they were doing last year.
Exactly.
A Taysom Hill of San Francisco.
Yeah, but an actual quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, Fred. The only other thing I was going to quickly ask you is, how do you feel about the NFC West? I mean, obviously it's loaded, isn't it? So do you feel that you've got the strength to get past all of them?
Yeah, I mean, I love being in a good division. It means, there's 6 very, very good games every single year. The Rams are going to be interesting. I'm a huge Matt Stafford fan. I really wanted the Niners to get Matt Stafford. The Seahawks, I think as long as the Seahawks has Russell Wilson, they're a contender. And the rest of their team, I thought last year was going to be their down year, and it, potentially was to an extent, but I think they're starting to rebuild a little bit there, and they're no easy team, and neither are the Cardinals. I mean, that Cardinals offense, as per, looks loaded, and they always give the Niners a good game. So it's a tough one. I could genuinely see any order of those 4 teams, and that makes it exciting. But yeah, it's not like a certain, some divisions, NFC East, for example, where you plot the Niners into the NFC East and they're, you're thinking, okay, this should be nice and easy. So I like it, but it does mean that you don't even have to be that bad and finish 4th. You could probably go 10-7 and finish 4th in this division.
I have the same thing with the AFC North. Like, I think it's so nice being in a real competitive division for sure.
Yeah.
Jacob, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Where can you find all your stuff on social media? Are you doing any podcasts at the minute? I wasn't sure. I know you were doing some, but
no, not at the moment. No, was doing the 49ers brawl, but have stopped that mainly due to time commitments and I was doing it with somebody in the US, and the time zones were killing me recording it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
2 a.m. So yeah, taking a little bit of a break from podcasting. So it was actually quite nice to come on here and be a guest. It's been quite a while since I've been on one. So
cheers, man.
So that was nice. Yeah, but if you do want to follow my socials on Twitter or Instagram, it's just at JBB Football.
No worries, buddy. I really appreciate it. And we'll let you go. I know you've got a work call, so you can head off. But again, thank you for coming on. And thank you all for watching. You can listen to us on iTunes podcast, on Spotify, and also watch us on YouTube. Remember to enter the Steve Rains Bowl competition via YouTube on our Twitter. We'll see you all next week.